All right, folks. So again, thank you all for being here. Happy Friday to you all. Today is March 26th, 2021. Today's lesson is going to feel a little long, but I think it'll be a good thing because it is long and it's going to help the class to go by quickly. We're going to wrap up our conversation about inheritance patterns by talking about what are called sex-linked traits. And then we'll also discuss this other concept or this other procedure that's called a karyotype. And I think you all will kind of enjoy this because it's going to feel a little bit more medical, a little bit more real and relevant to what you may have actually heard of. Excuse me. The essential question is, how can we protect inheritance patterns? Not protect. How can we predict inheritance patterns using known information about the parents? So I've got 4 people here with me today: Gloria, Brian, Ayana, and Ardesia. They are going to serve as my helpers for the lesson. So I want to make sure that they have their notebooks out. But you folks at home, I'm definitely still going to be calling on you: Sade, Monet, Jason, Rudy, Brianna, Fraylin. I want to hear from you all as well. Thank you for being here. I look forward to wrapping up, these next few days and getting into spring break. One thing to mention, we haven't set the exact EOC date yet, or at least I have not been told exactly when it will be, but I do expect that it, for this class, will be probably Wednesday, May 20, no, today, this is second block. So Tuesday, May 25th is what I'm thinking, which means we've got almost exactly 2 months left. So we're going to be kind of kicking our review practices into overdrive. We need to wrap up this unit. We'll take our unit exam for this unit on Tuesday. And then we've got units 8, 9, and 10 left to go. That's going to allow us ample time, about 9 days of class at the end of the school year, to do nothing but review. But as you all saw in the warm-up, I'm going to start to get some more throwback questions going. We got to start to make connections to some concepts that we haven't discussed in a while. So if there's something that you all need from me, or if you're like, hey, Mr. Wright, I like to study this way, can you make more flashcards or make more videos, or can I schedule some time with you? Please just let me know, and I'm happy to do that. Okay, because remember, the goal is all of you to have mastered this class. That means getting a 4 or a 5 on the EOC exam. I know you all can do it, and we're going to keep pushing towards it, but we got to keep working hard, especially those of us who are here in person. All right. So sex-linked traits, nothing to write down yet. I will tell you when you need to start writing. You'll see some stuff highlighted in yellow. But sex-linked traits appear on the X chromosome. The X chromosome contains about 155 million nucleotides. So those nucleotides, of course, are the A's, T's, C's, and G's. Each chromosome, the X chromosome carries about 800 to 900 genes on it. So that's a pretty significant portion of all of the genes that make up human beings. We've got about 30,000 genes. So 900 of them are located on this X chromosome. That's just under 3%. But there's also a Y chromosome. It's much smaller. It only contains 58 million nucleotides and about 200 genes. One of the most important genes that it contains is called the SRY gene. And this leads to the development of male phenotypes. So this leads to the development of testes and a scrotum and the like, as well as some other male phenotype typical traits. As we can see, the X chromosome is much, much longer and larger than the Y chromosome. Okay, so let's see how much you guys know. Let's see if there's any prior knowledge about this concept. A person who is born with 2 X chromosomes is what? What do we call that person? Any ideas? If you're born with 2 X chromosomes. Okay, so a person born with 2 X chromosomes, I guess we don't know this, is born female. So people who are born females have 2 X chromosomes. A person who is born male is born with what? What do you guys think? 1 X and 1 Y. Good. So a person who is born male is born with one X chromosome and one Y chromosome. I do want you to write this down. This is very important stuff. People who are born female have two X chromosomes. People who are born male have one X chromosome and one Y chromosome. Good job, Brian and Ayana.
Ms. Peoples, please report to room 100 for testing. Ms. Peoples, please report to room 100.
Okay, so Gloria, it looks like you're done writing. So I just want to make this super clear. If I tell you that a person only has one X chromosome, what does that mean about that person? That they're a male. Okay, good. Brian, let's say it this way. If I tell you that a person has a Y chromosome, what does that mean about that person? Don't say dude, just say male. Let's use the scientific terms. Now, I'm glad you did say that though, because I always like to mention at this point in the class that there's a difference between sex and gender, and we need to be clear about that difference. As you noticed there, you've never heard about that? Okay, so let me explain that. I'm glad somebody has admitted that they don't know this. So when it comes to sex, this is what we're describing someone's scientific anatomical features. Now, this is why I'm using the language people who are born female and people who are born male. And another way we might even say this in the year 2021 is people who are assigned male or assigned female at birth. The reason for this is that, believe it or not, one out of about every 1,500 births is a person whose anatomy, their reproductive organs, are not clearly male or clearly female at birth. So this is actually a pretty common. Okay. So when you're born, let's say that we've got about 1,500 people. So that's like the population of West Mac, a little bit bigger than West Mac. One person out of 1,500 is going to be born with some type of reproductive organ that is not obviously a penis, but is also not obviously a vagina. So the doctors will sometimes, without consulting the parents, do a quick procedure to make it clear that it's one or the other. And so essentially what they're doing is they are assigning that person a sex at birth. They're saying, okay, well, we're pretty sure that that's a penis, so we're going to just make it a little more clear by kind of closing this hole. Or we're pretty sure that this is a vagina, so we're going to make it a little bit more clear by snipping a little bit of that tissue. This does happen, and it's relatively common. Sometimes they will, alert the parents, which obviously they should, and the parents will make a decision when the child is maybe, 6 years old about what they want to do regarding their reproductive organs. So this does happen. But when we use this phrase sex, what we're discussing is a person's reproductive organs, their actual anatomy, and also their hormones as well, because both of these things determine what a person's sex will be if they are born male or female. Gender is a more sociologically informed term. It takes into account things that we think of when we think of women and men. It takes into account the fact that women dress a certain way, men dress a certain way. This is why we say that now, and more recently, we know that people are transgender, right? That they are in the process of transitioning, or that they feel that how they identify is not congruent with how they look. They might have the organs and the anatomy of a male, but they identify as a woman. And so gender, on the other hand, is not this rigid idea. It is a fluid idea that takes into account all of these socially informed ideas of how a woman should act, how a man should act, how they should dress, how they interact with one another, who they love, these types of things. Sex is a little bit more rigid in terms of it's basically what is your anatomy. Does that make sense, Brian? Okay. So that's why I like to use, and that's why I am going to try my hardest to only use the language of female and male. I don't like to say man and woman. I don't like to say guys and whatever. Just female and male, because we're going to stick to sex in this class. Gender is a different conversation that we can have, but they are two different things. Just want to be clear about that. Okay. So we're going to talk about some sex-linked traits. The important thing to know about these sex-linked traits is that you only find them on the X chromosome. This means that because males only have one X chromosome, and that's what Gloria was just thinking through, they are more likely to express sex-linked traits. A man or a person who is born male has a 50% chance of having a sex-linked trait or of expressing a sex-linked trait. A person who is born female only has a 33% chance, and we'll see exactly why that is. So males are more likely to express sex-linked traits because they only have one X chromosome. Okay. Good. So here are some examples of sex-linked traits. Male pattern baldness is a sex-linked trait, but women, I keep saying women, people who are born female can also have male pattern baldness. Oftentimes will result in thinner hair, a receding hairline, and the like. Color blindness is a sex-linked trait. Because some of them have this trait. Males are more likely to have sex-linked traits. That's what we just wrote down. And so it's more likely, it's more common. It's like a 50% chance that a male will have this male pattern baldness trait. It also has something to do with hormones as well. Would you say? No, no. This is why you will see some males who have a full head of hair well into their 80s and 90s. It probably won't be colorful. It'll probably be gray hair, but they'll still have it. Color blindness is another example of a sex-linked traits. Again, we only find these sex-linked traits on the X chromosome. And then there's a disorder called muscular dystrophy that we will talk about a little bit. That is also a sex-linked trait. All right, now I do want you to write this chart down. So go ahead and copy it before we start to fill it out. We've got 3 columns, 6 rows. Take some time to copy this out and we'll fill it in over the next couple of minutes. So of course, we're still talking about these same 3 genotypes: homozygous dominant, heterozygous, and homozygous recessive. Okay, so Ardesia, what are the sex chromosomes for a female? XX, yeah, good. Oops, and I showed the male too. I was going to ask you, Gloria. But yeah, of course, the male sex chromosomes are XY. So just like with all of these other traits that we've discussed and all of these other inheritance patterns, you of course get 2, right? You get 2 chromosomes, you get 2 alleles. The reason for this is that you've got 2 biological parents. Your biological father contributes 1 and your biological mother contributes the other. All right, so we always are going to have 2 chromosomes, and each chromosome has its own alleles as well. Okay, so the homozygous dominant genotype. Now we are using, in this case, I decided to use a trait with the letter B. And so a capital B will represent the dominant allele, and a lowercase b will represent the recessive allele. Okay, so keep that in mind. So what do we think the homozygous dominant genotype will look like for a female? Any ideas? It will be XX, but where does the B come in? What do you think? We're talking about homozygous dominant. So there will be a capital B. And this is what it looks like. Now, keep in mind, which chromosome gets the sex-linked traits? What'd you say? Males are more likely to get it. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have phrased it like that. You are right about that. Let me rephrase it. Where do we find sex-linked traits? On which chromosome? On the X chromosome. So take a look at this. For homozygous dominant, Breon is correct. We use capital B's. But look what you're seeing. We only see the capital B next to the X chromosome. We don't see it next to the Y, because the Y chromosome does not have sex-linked traits. It does not carry sex-linked traits. Notice that we are still homozygous dominant. Homo is a prefix that means what? Same. Thank you, Ardesia. So it's still homozygous because we have 2 of the same alleles. They're both capital B's. And because they're capital B's, of course, they are the dominant alleles. So that's what makes it homozygous dominant. The male only has one X chromosome, so he only gets one B. You can't put a B on the Y. Okay, so based on that, let's see if we can pick up on the pattern. Breon, what do you think the heterozygous genotype for a female will look like? Heterozygous. Good. Now notice that we're writing the B's like superscripts. We're writing them like exponents. So they go in kind of like the top right portion next to the letter. Now for males, you cannot have a heterozygous genotype because males only have one X chromosome. So this is what we mean when we say males are more likely to have the sex-linked trait because they either have it or they don't. It's a 50% chance. Females have three possibilities. They can be homozygous dominant, they can be heterozygous, and they can be homozygous recessive. So there's only a 33% chance that they will have the recessive trait. Okay, so Ardesia, what do you think the homozygous recessive genotype for a female will look like? Good, excellent. So homozygous recessive, we have two lowercase b's next to the x's. And again, males only have one X. So if they are homozygous recessive, that means that they have that one recessive allele, one lowercase b. Got this chart? This is going to be helpful to us. Okay. All right. Now, females who are heterozygous, meaning that they have one dominant allele and one recessive allele, they also have a special name. We call them carriers. This is because they actually carry the trait. They can pass it on, but they are not affected by it. Because in order to be affected by the trait, you need to be homozygous recessive. You need to have two lowercase b's. That's the only way to get these recessive traits. So they don't actually have the trait. They're not affected by it, but they can pass it on to their offspring. So we call them carriers. Okay. So, okay, I don't know that you need to write this down if you just read it and you fully understand it. If you think you need to write it down, then perhaps you should. But what this is saying is that the disorder, a sex-linked recessive disorder, only affects homozygous recessive females and males with the recessive allele. So that means that the only way to get this disorder is if you are homozygous recessive, if you have nothing but the recessive allele. If you have a dominant allele, you won't have the disorder because the dominant allele will actually hide the recessive allele. It's going to mask it. So we'll see. We'll get plenty of practice with this. Plenty of practice. Brianna, are you writing this down? Okay. All right, let's do a practice problem. So this question or problem says, hemophilia is a sex-linked recessive disorder that causes excessive bleeding. Basically, this is a disorder that prevents your blood from clotting so that even small cuts and bruises bleed a lot. It's extremely dangerous. And it's a sex-linked trait. So we're going to use the letter capital H for the dominant allele and a lowercase h to represent the recessive allele. On the outside of this Punnett square that we're about to reveal, I'll reveal it now, of course, we can see the parents' information. What can we tell about the parents? I've put the mother on the top and I've put the father on the left. What can we tell about the mother? The mother is heterozygous. Excellent. How did you know that, Brian? There's one capital H and there's one lowercase h. So she is heterozygous. And what do we call females who are heterozygous? They're carriers. Good. Excellent. So the mother is a carrier here. And what do we know about the father? Can we tell anything about him? He's dominant. So does that mean he's healthy or does he have hemophilia? No. He's healthy. Good, because hemophilia is recessive. It's recessive. So that means you can only get it if you only have the recessive alleles. So he does not carry the recessive allele. He's got the dominant allele. That means that he's healthy. Okay. All right. Now we want to do the actual cross. So I've got 4 people in class with me. I'm gonna have them help me to fill out this Punnett square. Yeah. So you are right. And we're going to drop this one down. Only have it down. So we're sliding that one over here. This one gets down. So what can we talk about? They're hetero. All right, man. They're female. Good. And what does it mean? What do we call a female? A carrier. So this is a carrier female. Good. Okay. All right. What's going to go on this side? Capital H. Capital, yeah. Then what else is this class? A Y. Okay. So the Y gets split over. And so what do you know about this part? Are they male or female? They're male. Good. And do they have hemophilia or are they healthy? They're healthy. Good. So this is a healthy male. All right. Let's finish off with Excellent. This X with the lowercase h down, the Y slides over, so this is what we end up with. Now, what do we know about this person? No. Male, and is he healthy or does he have hemophilia? He has hemophilia, and how did you know that? He's recessive. Beautiful. Yeah, so lowercase h means he's recessive. That means he does have hemophilia. Okay. All right, so we filled out this Punnett square with the folks who are here. They did an excellent job. What we find out is that we've got one child, one offspring in the top left that is a healthy female. So there's a 25% chance that they have a healthy female. We've got one offspring who in the top right who is a carrier female. So there's a 25% chance that they have a child who is just like their mother, is a carrier of hemophilia. Then there's a box in the bottom left. There's a 25% chance that they have a healthy son, a healthy male child. But then there's that box in the bottom right, which shows that there's a 25% chance that they have a son who is a hemophiliac. Okay, so that's how we want to kind of analyze these Punnett squares. There's a 25% chance they have a carrier. There's a 75% chance that their child will be healthy, that their child will not actually have hemophilia. But there is a 25% chance that they do have a hemophiliac child. Okay, so that's the type of analysis we want to be able to do. All right. So let's keep practicing. So it says baldness is a sex-linked recessive disorder. Let's represent the dominant allele B and the recessive allele for baldness with a lowercase b. Can you predict who will suffer from baldness? So we've got a box on the left for not bald. We've got a box on the right for bald. And then in the middle, I've got all those genotypes and phrases. So I want you all to help me figure out where we should place those genotypes. So the first one is X capital B, X lowercase b. Does that go in not bald or bald? So that person is not bald. That person is heterozygous. So yes, they do have one recessive allele, but they also have a dominant allele, which prevents them from having this baldness trait. All right, the next person, X capital B Y. Are they bald or not bald? They're not bald because they have that dominant allele again. X lowercase b y. Did you say Ardesia? Oh, I thought I heard you say something. X lowercase by. What do we think? Bald. That person is bald because they only have the recessive allele. Okay, so the only way to be bald is if you only have the recessive allele, the lowercase b. Okay, X capital B, X capital B. That person is not bald. I don't see any recessive alleles there. No lowercase b's. X lowercase b, X lowercase b. Bald. Good. X lowercase b, Y lowercase b. You would think bald, but something's wrong here. What's wrong with this?
Oh, it got a B after the Y.
Exactly. There's a B. Thank you, Ardesia. Thank you, Brianna. There's a lowercase b after the Y. Why is that wrong? Why not? Because it's a male, and say what you just said, Ayana. Because males should only have one X chromosome, and we only find sex-linked traits on the X chromosome. So it says in that very first sentence, baldness is a sex-linked disorder. So we shouldn't have baldness appearing on the Y chromosome at all. It's not there. We only see sex-linked traits on the X chromosome. So that was a trick question. That's not possible. Okay, If you are a carrier female, are you bald or not bald? You're not bald. Then which one of those genotypes is the carrier female genotype?
B, lowercase.
Good. Yeah.
This one. Capital B, lowercase.
And then if you're homozygous recessive, are you bald or not bald?
Bald.
You are bald. Good. Good job. Seems like we're picking up on this fast. Okay, we'll do a couple more practice problems. Male pattern baldness is a sex-linked recessive trait. A female carrier of the trait mates with a male that has male pattern baldness. What percentage of their children will have this trait? So this is a Punnett square problem. So what is always our first step when we're doing Punnett square problems? Yes.
Make a key.
Good. Thank you, Brianna. Thank you, Ayana, as well. We need to make a key. Now, in this case, the key is going to look a little bit different than what we've done in the past. We really just need to know what each allele represents, and then we need to know information about the parents. So we need to know their parents' genotypes. Okay, so yeah, go ahead and write this one down. You all will have at least one example. You don't need to write the question, but just follow along with me with the key and the Punnett square. Okay. So Gloria, can you help me out?
What is this allele? This is phenotype. X capital B. Now, it looks like you did. I don't know if the answer. You just need this. Okay, say that. Is this dominant or recessive? It's not. Good. Because it has a capital B. The first sentence says male pattern baldness and sex-linked recessive. So if I have the dominant allele, am I bald or not bald? Not bald. Good. So that represents healthy hair. So then this one with the lowercase is dominant. So what is it code for? It's recessive traits of healthiness. The part this is baldness. We've got the recessive allele that's giving you the baldness trait.
So the next thing we need to do, tell me if I need to slow down or if there are any questions. The next thing we need to do is find out information about the parents. We need to know the parents' genotypes. So what does it tell us about the mother in this background information? It says that the mother is a carrier, yeah. So what is the genotype for a person who is a carrier, a female carrier? Excellent, thank you, Ayana. A carrier is X capital B, X lowercase b. And I apologize that that's so small. And Breon, what information does it tell us in this sentence about the father? Do you see any information in the question about the father? He does have baldness. So what is his genotype? X lowercase by. Good. Of course, males only have one X chromosome, and then they also have a Y. So the fathers, and we know that because in the question it says a male that has male pattern baldness. So he does have that baldness allele, the lowercase b. Okay, now we want to actually do our Punnett square. I'm going to choose to put the female genotype on top and the male genotype on the left. Don't imply anything. I don't mean to imply anything with the colors pink and blue. Of course, males can wear pink and females can obviously wear blue, so nothing to imply there. X capital B, X lowercase b. That is the mom. X lowercase b, Y. That is the dad. All right. So again, I've got 4 people here with me. They're going to help me fill out this Punnett square.
I'll start with you. Which one is going to go? Good. Drop down. Lauren, which one here? Wait, I didn't hear you. Good. So we are both lowercase. X lowercase b drops down. Oh, there you go. Y. Excellent. And then Brian, X lowercase b.
Good. All right, so now we've done the Punnett square, but what is that question actually asking us? So what percentage of the children will have this trait? So what percentage of the children will have the trait for baldness? What can you all tell me? We're looking for an actual percentage here. Clear this out. How did you get that? That's correct.
Yeah, 50.
Why is it not?
I was thinking.
Exactly. So, which two are you talking about that will be involved? Two on the right. Yes, exactly. These two will end up being involved because they both have these are 2 recessive alleles. So this is a female who has the baldness trait, and this is the recessive allele as well. So the male has the baldness trait. We always have 4 offspring, right? Because the sperm only have 4 boxes. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
But however, the first one is dominant. And the second.
Right. So 2 out of 2 do not have baldness. 2 out of 4. I'm sorry. 2 out of 4 do not have the baldness. So 2 out of 4 is what?
Oh, yeah, right.
50.
But if the one at the top, the female carrier that has the trait wouldn't have. But she has the trait, it just doesn't affect her.
Okay, well, that's, yeah, you just said it true. So even though she has this, she's a carrier. So you're right about that. She can pass this on to her children, but she herself does not have it. Just like this person, she can pass it on to 2 of her children, but she herself does not actually have the baldness trait.
But the question says the percentage, what percentage of the child? And you just said she can carry it to the child. The women.
It says what percentage have.
Oh.
So what I mean when I say have the trait, I'm saying or will eventually. So this I like this point that if we had said which percentage of them will have the allele, then it would have been 1, 2, 3 out of 4, 7. She has the allele. She has the lowercase b, but she doesn't have the trait. She doesn't have the ball. So the allele and the trait are 2 different things. Does that make sense?
Okay. So we just had a good discussion about why this is 50%. We've got 2 offspring on the right side of the Punnett square who do have baldness because they only have the recessive allele. So 2 out of 4 possible offspring is 50%. Now, we also discussed the fact that there's a difference between having the trait and having the allele. If you look in the top left box, that offspring is X capital B, X lowercase b. So they do have the recessive allele. They do have a lowercase b, but they do not have the trait. They are not going to develop baldness. Okay, so we need to be careful with that. But that was a great point. Ayana brought that up, so we should be thankful for her. Okay, take a look at these numbers. Ardeja, what's the very first number? 7. Gloria, can you see the number next to it? 13. Rion, what's next to that? Ayana, can you see the one that's on the bottom left? 8. Okay, so it seems like you all can see all of these numbers, but there are some people who are colorblind, or they might be blind for a specific hue. For example, I had a teacher when I was in 8th grade who was colorblind for red and green. He couldn't distinguish between the two. They just both looked gray to him. So he wouldn't be able to see that number 7. He wouldn't be able to see number 8 or 12 or 9. Some people have a problem with blue and red. They can't distinguish between the two. They both look gray. And so they wouldn't be able to see 13 or 16. So these are the tests that they run to determine if a person has color blindness. Color blindness is a sex-linked recessive trait, believe it or not. So a man with color blindness, and we can see his genotype there, X lowercase n y, marries a woman who is a carrier for color blindness. What is the likelihood that they will have a son who is colorblind? We're looking specifically for a colorblind male offspring. Okay. We need to make a key first. In this key, we need to know what each allele codes for. So a capital N in this case, the dominant allele, what does that give us? Which trait does that give us? The dominant allele. Not colorblindness, because colorblindness, and I'm sorry, I should have included it in the question. It's sex-linked recessive. So the dominant allele gives you perfect color sight. You will have the ability to see colors, as most of us do. X lowercase n codes for colorblindness. It's the recessive allele. Okay, now we need to also know information about the parents. This is where people make a lot of mistakes, guys. And if you've done the activity on Canvas that's called U7, I think it's D4 whiteboard practice, what I've noticed is that that's where a lot of mistakes are coming out because people are struggling with finding the correct genotypes for the parents. So you really, really need to be careful because if you mess that up, then your Punnett square has no chance of being right. So you need to have the correct information for the parents. So make sure you're reading these questions carefully. All right, so in this question, Ardeja, can you tell me, is there any information about the mom in the question? She's a carrier, so what is her genotype? Okay, you're right. We're using the letter N in this question, though. But you're right. So X capital N and X lowercase n. And then, Breon, what does it tell us about the father in this question? He is colorblind. It says a man with colorblindness. And so what is his genotype? Yeah, X lowercase n y. Now we're going to do our Punnett square. Mom's going to go on top. Dad will go on the left. All right, one more time. Wonderful. What goes in this one? Wonderful. What goes in this one? Good. And then can you finish us off here? Wonderful. All right, this is like second nature to us now. But now we need to answer the question. What is the question actually asking us? Wonderful. They need a son they don't need a son, but we're wondering what is the likelihood that they will have a son, specifically a son who is colorblind, not just a colorblind child, but a colorblind son. So what's the answer here? What percentage are we looking at?
Is we talking about the illegal?
Okay. Now I think that's where both of you were thinking. So if they have a son, there's a 30% chance that the son will be colorblind. Only this one out of two. If they have a child who is colorblind, there's a 50% chance that that child will be a son. Does that make sense? But of all four of their possible offsprings, what is the likelihood that they get a colorblind son? It's 25%. Okay, so the question is worded. I can see why you would say 50%, but then you said 50 because you're thinking, okay, if they have a son, then it's a 50% chance that the son is colorblind. But we want to know out of all the offspring, and only one out of the four boxes gives us colorblind, so it's 25%. But that was good thinking. Ayana, you kind of think outside of the box. I like that. You too, Gloria. Thank you for that. Okay, this next question, let's skip past this in the interest of time. Okay, one more concept today. This one is a little bit interesting, I think. So a karyotype, it's a weird word, karyotype. This is literally an image of a person's chromosomes, and they get mapped out. So we take a little bit of genetic information from that person's cells, from their nuclei, and we're going to analyze their chromosomes. We're literally going to map them out. They get arranged in pairs. So how many, well, never mind, I'll ask that question later. They get arranged in pairs because chromosomes that are the same size also happen to carry the same genetic information. They have the same genes on them. The first 22 pairs are called autosomes. And these are genes that basically decide most of who you are. But the last pair is your sex chromosomes, which we were just discussing. So if I take a look at this person, and I look at this karyotype, it's massive. Can you tell me anything about this person? Specifically, look at this person.
I mean, it's a male.
You're on the right track. Why is it a male? Do you see why? And I don't see just one X. I see two X's.
Are you talking about the chromosomes?
So if
It's
there's
a female.
then it's a female, yeah. So there are two X's here. But each one of these is like its own chromosome. That's one, that's another, that's another. Right, so
Did you circle the X and
yeah, I threw the X and the Y to show you that these are the sex chromosomes, but there's nothing precedent in them. They just have two X's. Good point, though. So this person is female. They have two X chromosomes. What about this person? Are they male or female? They're female. They also have two X chromosomes. Good. All right, so let's just stop and think a little bit deeper. So if we really think about this, who is going to determine the offspring's gender, mom or dad? Or the offspring's sex, that should say. I'm sorry. The offspring's sex. Mom or dad? Why do you say mom? We already talked about the fact that sex-linked traits appear on the X chromosome, and females have two X chromosomes. So you might think that they are contributing more to the child. Does anybody think dad? Okay, let's think about this. So if mom, what would mom's two sex chromosomes be? What does she have? Y, X? She's XX, right? So she can only give an X to her offspring. It's the dad who determines the sex, because mom can only give an X. Remember, you get one from each parent. That's how this all works. You get one chromosome from each parent. So if we're looking at this map, that's coming from mom, that's coming from mom, that's coming from dad. Even when we look at the sex chromosome, you get two, right? So the X, one of the X's has to come from mom, because that's all she can get. She can only get an X. If you get a Y, who did it have to come from? Dad. If you got a second X, who did it have to come from? No, mom can't get two X's. So she gives one X. Dad would have to be, he gives whatever comes to that. So you can give the second X, or you can give a Y. So he's determining the sex. If you get a second X, then you are a female. If you get a Y, then you end up being a male. Does that make sense? So dad is determining the sex. Mom can't give a Y. So if it was just moms, then we'd all have two X's. We would all be females. Dad is the only person who can give a Y chromosome. Now, this is an interesting concept in evolution too. And if you have you guys ever heard of like 23andMe or like Ancestry.com, and they'll send you DNA kits, and you can track and see like where your family is from, where your ancestors are from. So there are two ways to do that, and different companies do different things. One way is to look at the DNA that's inside of a mitochondria. What does a mitochondria do? Do you remember that? That was a long time ago. Okay, we'll review that later, but for the purpose of making this point, their mitochondria actually have their own DNA. So that's kind of above the level of this class, but they have a little bit of their own DNA. The thing about it is that when you're literally minutes old, not old, but when you're like being developed inside of your mother, like in the moments right after fertilization, all of the organelles that will eventually develop into the cells that become you are coming from your mother, including the mitochondria. So you get all of that DNA from only one person, from your mother. So that means that we can literally look at each person's what's called mitochondrial DNA, and we can look at we can look at their lineage of mothers. We can see your mother, and then her mother, your grandmother, and that person's mother, your great grandmother. We can just go back and back and back. And by looking at that mitochondrial DNA, we're literally just looking at the women in your family. So that's pretty cool. But the other way to do it is by looking at these Y chromosomes, which will allow us to look at the fathers in your family, because you can only get a Y chromosome from your father. All right, so as a male, if I were to do a DNA test, they could analyze my Y chromosome and see exactly what information I got from my dad, and what came from his dad, and what came from his dad, and back and back and back, right? So there are two ways to do it. One way that looks at mothers, one way that looks at fathers. Okay, so there are abnormal karyotypes. And I know we have less than 5 minutes. We're almost done. Abnormal karyotypes have the wrong number of chromosomes. And this could be in any one of the 23 pairs. So we're supposed to get one copy from mom, one copy from dad. We have 23 pairs. So how many should we have in total? 46. We should have 46 chromosomes. Some people, unfortunately, get born with 47. because they have an extra, or they might be born with 45 because they're missing one. All right, so that would be an abnormality. We can look at karyotypes to actually determine where the abnormality is occurring. So look at this karyotype right here. Do you all see anything that's wrong with it? Any abnormalities?
Oh, you got an extra one at 21.
Good.
Good on. 1, 2, 3. This person has chromosomes at the 21st. Is this person male or female? Male.
So this is a specific disorder. It's called trisomy 21.
Tri because there are 3 chromosomes, and 21 because it's in the 21st. We more commonly know it as Down syndrome.
So people who have Down syndrome, they have 3 chromosomes in their 21st position. All right, what about this one? Do you see any problems here? Look at all 23 pairs.
The X is missing one.
Good.
Yeah, man. So we're looking here, right? In the 23rd pair. It's supposed to be a pair. We need 2. So there should either be a Y or there should be 2 X. This person only has a.
So they have 45 chromosomes. That's also a problem. It's called monosomy X. They only have 1 X chromosome. All right, this is more commonly known as what's called Turner syndrome. So this person will still be born female, but they will have a number of health issues and developmental issues, and they won't be fertile, unfortunately. So I'm going to move through this, but the reason this happens, the problem is called non-disjunction. We'll talk more about that. Here are some other disorders that are caused by non-disjunction. So there's Down syndrome, that's trisomy 21. Then there's Patau syndrome, trisomy 13. So having 3 chromosomes in the 13th position. It leads to this cleft palate, as you can see. So the bone that's supposed to be there as a part of your skull to separate your mouth from your nasal cavity is not there. So that can lead to problems, but it can be surgically fixed as well. And then we see others. Now, some of them lead to what I was talking about earlier, where some people are born intersex, where they literally have some sexual characteristics of both sexes. So Klinefelter syndrome, that person has 2 X's and a Y. Turner syndrome is what we were just talking about, where they are missing an X chromosome. So they just have a single X. All right, so interesting stuff here. And one more thing, you don't have to write this down. Amniocentesis is how we can actually get these karyotypes. I'll talk more about that on Monday. Excellent job today to my people in person. I appreciate you all. And I hope you have a great weekend.